Welcome everyone to Observe China. Trump campaign attorney Sidney Powell asserted during a Thursday press conference that President Donald Trump won by a landslide, saying that their legal team will prove it. Powell, who alleged a transnational conspiracy involving the influence of communist money from countries including Cuba, Venezuela, and likely China, to overturn the presidential race via election software. The longtime lawyer, who represented General Michael Flynn, then called on the Department of Justice to launch a criminal investigation. Powell, a former prosecutor, made reference to a whistleblower that came forward and witnessed how voting software can secretly manipulate votes. The person said they worked with the Venezuelan military, outlining a conspiracy between Smartmatic executives, former socialist Venezuelan dictator Hugo Chavez, and election officials in the country years ago. The whistleblower also said that the software and fundamental design of the electronic electoral system and software of Dominion and other election tabulating companies relies upon software that is a descendant of the Smartmatic electoral management system. Trump's legal team has some serious power players, two of which are making headlines. Sidney Powell and Linwood are both fighting legal battles for Trump in different states. I want to tell you about the story behind the two lawyers. Let's start with Linwood. Lucian Lincolnwood Jr. wanted to be a lawyer since he was young. His father killed his mother and has solidified his decision to pursue law. In 1996, you might have heard that there was a person by the name of Richard Jewell, which he represented in a defamation case. Will make this case special was actually what happened to Jules. He was a security guard. They had discovered a bag in the Centennial Olympic Park containing pipe bombs, Jules, and quickly dispersed the crowd nearby, and the bomb did go off, killing one and injuring over 110 people. Without his effort, there might have been a bigger catastrophe. After the bombing, Due, rather than being hailed as a hero, was initially investigated as a suspect by the FBI, and the news media aggressively focused on him as the presumed culprit when he was actually innocent. Linwood stepped in and fought the court case with media groups like NBC and CNN, among others, and they eventually settled out of court. And then another famous suit followed with the death of John Benet Ramsey, where her parents again were wrongfully accused by the media as the culprit. Linwood again fought for them as the lead attorney. More recently, a high school student named Nick Sandman, Framco venting Covington Catholic High School in Kentucky, was filmed, apparently smiling at an indigenous elder, in which the media again labeled this young man in various defamation terms. Linwood stepped in again, and this time helping Sandman. They settled with the Washington Post recently, and after that Linwood is restored, currently representing Cole Rittenhouse, who had killed two writers in Kenosha. Now his highest, or his newest fight right now is for the President of the United States. It's interesting that if you take a look, one of Linwood's biggest opponent has always been the media. So Lumen has been fighting for the wrongfully accused for quite a while. And he is also very vocal about the influence of the Chinese Communist parties in the United States, stating that multiple times that the CCP infiltration has been happening without the US recognizing. Now let's talk about Sidney Powell. She has been very vocal and clear about the message she wants to send on shows like Blue Dub and Maria Bartiromo's show and such. In that, Linwood is good at fighting against the media, but Sidney Powell is good at dealing with the government branches, or so-called the swamp. In 2017, when Trump was first inaugurated, General Michael Flynn was the first to be dragged down by the Washington swamp he was in. He was an army person, and he says his words, he means what he says. And he speaks truthfully? Here's a quick breakdown of what happened in the Flynn case. So he had a conversation. Actually, multiple conversations with the Russian ambassador when he was on the transition team. You basically told the ambassador that we're going to sanction Russia, and you guys cannot retaliate, and his conversation was actually taped. So the former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe asked Flynn if he could speak to two federal agents, and Flynn didn't think much of it during the questioning. Agents asked questions about his conversation with the Russian ambassador, and Flynn said something along the lines of "don't recall, can't remember, didn't say much, etc." And then the agents took that and then showed Flint the phone transcripts between him and the Russian ambassador, and basically said, "You lied to us," accused them based on the Logan's Act. So lying to the FBI is a severe criminal charge in the United States, and one of the two agents, Peter Strzok, he did not mention to Flint ahead of time that it was a severe crime to lie to the FBI. Which is something you have to state. They intentionally did this, and then they pursue charges to the U.S. court. Flynn was pressured. He then told the Vice President Mike Pence that he did not say much. The ambassador, so he didn't really say what he wanted to say, and he was presumed again lying, and that further pressured him, causing him to resign. Or I guess he would be fired by Trump, and then his lawyers were telling him to admit to his lies and such, and telling him that he would only get 6 months or so in jail or that he would get community service, but then that's when Sidney Powell showed up. She stepped in and she told Flynn to resend his admission of guilt flowing. Fired his lawyer team 6 months later and hired Sidney Powell, and then wrote a letter. So Sidney wrote a letter to the Attorney General, William Barr, and saying that Barr, you have to get a new person to head the investigation on General Flint. So then after the investigation the case was dismissed. Later however, then Judge Emmett Sullivan decides that he wants to become the new plaintiff. And so Flint. So this is sort of where we are now with the Michael Flynn case. Now with Sidney Powell, she actually gained a lot of praise, especially from President Trump, for her work to help General Flint. And now Powell is jumped on to help President Trump himself in the 1970s to the 80s. Powell served as an Assistant United States Attorney General for the Western and Northern District of Texas and the Eastern District of Virginia. In 1993, Powell established her own law firm in Dallas. She fought mostly appeal cases, just served as lead counsel in more than 500 appeals in the Fifth Circuit courts, resulting in more than 180 published opinions and a reversal rate of approximately 70%. So she will fight appeals, and you have to understand appeals are very hard to fight as they have already been ruled once as defeat, and she has a 70% overturn rate of appeals in such high-profile cases. That is a very respectable number of overturned cases. She wants 350 cases out of the 500 appeals, so both Linwood and Powell are lawyers. We're not afraid of whatever the opposition forces are ahead of them, and they're willing to fight for justice. Linwood has been receiving death threats recently and as well, but they're not going to back down. Now let's talk about some news surrounding the latest lawsuit update from Trump's Steep. Rudy Giuliani said this morning that they withdrew a lawsuit in Michigan to stop the election in Wayne County from being prematurely certified before residents can be assured that every legal vote has been counted and every illegal vote has not been counted. This came after two canvassers, Monica Palmer and William Hartman, signed affidavits and resent their prior vote to certify voting. The two were allegedly threatened during a public board meeting on a video call. When Kevin served by the name of Abraham, Ash repeatedly claimed that Palmer was a racist. Later, Ash even called out the name of the school in which Palmer's kids attended. The next step is for the Senate Canvass Board to meet. So we'll see where that takes it. Georgia is also facing some serious issues with recounting. They're finding memory cards full of uncounted votes for Biden. They also found nearly 6,000 votes uncounted as well. A lawyer in Philadelphia, representing the Trump campaign, was placed under official protection after receiving threats of harm, according to the court papers. According to the New York Post, the attorney, Linda Kearns, was the subject of threats of harm to the point where she had to involve the police and U.S. Marshals, so that had to be provided to her for her safety. During a press conference on Thursday, Trump's legal team, including Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani, are repeatedly stressing the evidence they have covered, and as well we have covered in our recent videos, including mentioning the ties between Smartmatic and the Venezuelan government. Sidney Powell also said to encourage Dominion employees to come out and speak their truth if they're really fed up with the corruption. What's been going on with the voting? At the end of the segment, the team is also claiming that there is only far from over. This is actually just the beginning. She said that it was the opening statement to a lengthy court process in which they will show massive evidence. Interestingly enough, Giuliani also mentioned that New Mexico and Virginia are also on the list, but do not disclose much information. As of now, I speculate there will be more than that, which the legal team is actually holding on to, that they're not showing to us yet, so they're just waiting for the right type. Or, as Giuliani says, still collecting evidence. Like I mentioned in yesterday's video, the legal team is preparing for a massive advantage over the defendants in the court so that it would be hard for anyone to reject through evidence. Giuliani says they have enough affidavits right now to overturn the election, but it seems it's not yet the time to reveal it. He also replied that the goal is to go around the outrageous Iron Curtain of censorship. He says the fact that the affidavits are being concealed by the legacy media and not being covered is wrong, and we will wait for when the time is right to see what will be revealed. And I sat down with an on-trip, a newer with 20 years of expert experience in system administration of internet servers, now serving as a business consultant on what to make sense of the election fraud, whether it was possible or not, and how data can be manipulated. Here's our previously recorded interview. Arthur Rosenfield is an entrepreneur with 20 years of expert experience in systems, administration of internet servers, now serving as a business consultant. He says an algorithm is a statement that controls an outcome, and that all software is built the same way. However, it is hard to track manipulated data. If a program has been modified or data has been modified, because the data the program can be overwritten so that you never see what that algorithm looks like when asked about how a voting system works, he says it's difficult to determine what is inputted versus what the final result is. But once the data has been input into the machines, you don't know whether what's coming out is actually, accurate and then. Therefore it can be manipulated. If you go to a grocery store, and you ring up all your items, you get a receipt, and it tells you exactly how much everything is. We don't as consumers get those receipts when we vote, so there's no way to double-check what's actually been input. But even if you got a receipt, you wouldn't know that at the end of the day, the data that you got back in your receipt was actually what was delivered. Dr. Shiva Era to right of MIT recently investigated Michigan's voting data and found potential vote switching. Dr. Sheila claims that an algorithm was transferring votes from Trump divided in Dr. Shiver's analysis. He shows that in I think 5 of the markets in Michigan where he analyzed the data. The pattern was the same in the 6th market. It was different, so that would indicate that there's something wrong with the 5 markets. Not, there's something wrong with the 5th, 6th mark. Rosenfield says data should not look the same. There might be a problem if it does, and that auditing has to happen at every step and the ability to make sure that everything is in fact transmitted accurately, and auditable if it's not auditable, and there isn't any security for that auditing.